Mark said. That's a lot. Okay. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So, as Andrew said, we're going to have a look at 1 Samuel chapter 19 today. Now, there were two ways that I thought about doing the Bible study. A bit deep, like verse or a couple of verses by a couple of verses, and then stopping and contemplating. But then when I read the chapter, it's a narrative, it's a story. So I decided that we're just going to read it the whole way through as a story, and then I'll talk a little bit about the context to it, and then go into some of the themes, etc. Because I felt like it's better if you read it properly, you get the context. So any volunteers to read the chapter for us? Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Albert.
Just the whole thing?
Yeah, well, I think we'll just read it straight through. It's an interesting story.
Okay. Now Saul spoke to Jonathan, his sons, and all his servants, that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted greatly in David. So Jonathan told David, "My father Saul seeks to kill you. Therefore please be on your guard until morning, and stay in a secret place and hide. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where you are, and I will speak with my father about you. Then what I observe I will tell you." Thus Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father, and said to him, "Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he has not sinned against you, and because his works have been very good toward you. For he took his life in his hands and killed the Philistine, and the Lord brought about a great deliverance for all Israel. You saw it and rejoiced. Why then will you sin against innocent blood, to kill David without a cause?" So Saul heeded the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swore, "As the Lord lives, he shall not be killed." Then Jonathan called David, and Jonathan told him all these things. So Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. As there was war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines, and struck them with a mighty blow, and they fled from him. Now the distressing spirit from the Lord came upon Saul as he sat in his house with his spear in his hand, and David was playing music in his hand. Then Saul sought to pin David to the wall with the spear, but he slipped away from Saul's presence, and he drove the spear into the wall. So David fled and escaped that night. Saul also sent messengers to David's house to watch him and to kill him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, "If you do not save your life today, tomorrow you will be killed." So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image and laid it in the bed, put a cover of goat's hair for his head, and covered it with clothes. So when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said, "He is sick." Then Saul sent the messengers back to David, saying, "Bring him up to me in the bed, that I may kill him." And when the messengers had come in, there was an image in the bed, with a cover of goat's hair for his head. Then Saul said to Michal, "Why have you deceived me like this, and sent my enemy away, so that he has escaped?" And Michal answered Saul, "He said to me, 'Let me go. Why should I kill you?'" So David fled and escaped, and went to Samuel at Ramah, and told him all that Saul had done to him. And he and Saul went and stayed in Naioth. Now it was told Saul, saying, "Take note, David is at Naioth in Ramah." Then Saul sent messengers to take David. And when they saw the group of prophets prophesying, and Samuel standing as leader over them, the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul, and they also prophesied. And when Saul was told, he sent other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. Then Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they prophesied also. Then he also went to Ramah, and came to the great well that is at Seku. And so he asked and said, "Where are Samuel and David?" And someone said, "Indeed, they are at Naioth in Ramah." So he went there to Naioth in Ramah. Then the Spirit of God was upon him also. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth in Ramah. And he also stripped off his clothes and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Therefore they say, "Is Saul also among the prophets?"
Glory be to God forever, amen. Okay, thanks, Albert. Okay, so it's a pretty straightforward chapter. It's a story, like I said. It doesn't really have like some of the more difficult Bible verses to understand. The heading of the chapter is Saul persecutes David. So in a nutshell, that's exactly what's happening here. He's out to get him, and he wants him dead. But this isn't, so seeing that this isn't a talk, it's a Bible study, I thought we might start with an icebreaker where we could maybe share, if you're comfortable. But the question to break the ice is, oh, it's not loud enough. I really don't like it. Of course you can. Can anyone think, if you would like to share, of a time you felt someone was against you, but you sensed God's protection? So for me, I've got quite a few examples, not just one example, but quite a few examples of my work life in corporate. They say corporate is a dog-eat-dog world. There have been people who have been like really giving me a hard time, or like out to get me. You can't deny it. And it's been painful, and it's been scary, and it's been anxiety-inducing, and it's been stressful. But the examples that I'm thinking of, every time I've come out on top. It took a while, it's not overnight, but the outcome has been time and time again in this place that I work. That's how I felt. So does anybody else maybe have ever felt that someone's out to get you, or working against you, or has it in for you unfairly, but somehow in that situation you sensed God's protection?
For me, again, it's something similar with work. So it was more of, there was someone that was basically slandering me to other managers, and so I had no idea what was going on. And so I did feel something did feel wrong, but then there was someone else that was just came to me straight away and just started telling me, "Oh, this has happened," and they themselves were clearing the things up. So they made sure that their slander wasn't because it wasn't true. They made sure to clarify with everyone, and obviously I'm grateful to that person, and I'm grateful to God that He allowed me to just stay calm and patient in that time. And also, He took me out of that situation as well, because after that, I joined a new project, so I didn't have to spend as much time with that person, and didn't had to. It wasn't a confrontation. It was more this happened, and I just moved on. And so God helped me find out earlier, and work through. I believe He worked through this other person, and this other I think it was two people, and they end up clearing out. And if it didn't happen, like, I don't even know how it would have ended for me, but
Yeah.
God did
So
one.
he often reveals it, even if we have no idea what's going on behind our back. And he often removes us from the situation. In my case, he removed the person completely.
So a couple of years ago, I had a new job at Royal North Shore Hospital in like the transit lounge, which I'm not going to explain what that is. But anyways, so there was a casual person who was basically working there like every single week. She was always there. And this lady was literally like, okay, I'm not going to say it, but she was like so like unhinged that she would literally like scream at everyone, and she was so stressed about everything all the time. Every little thing stresses her out, blah, blah, blah. So I was like a new person to this job, and I was working full time, so I was there like all the time. I was like everyone else was casual part-time, I was there all the time. So I was learning the job. Okay, she basically, because she was like so stressed out all the time and she didn't like anything, blah, blah, blah. And she had like, there was other people who had the same experience with her that she would just tell them off and make them cry and stuff like that. So she used to just scream at me and get pissed off at me a lot. And I was like, I didn't like it, and I couldn't handle it anymore. So one time, there was like a day, she was very angry, and then something happened. I'm not going to tell you exactly what happened. She screamed at me in front of like the patients, in front of everyone. She screamed at me, and then I couldn't take it, so I literally ran outside. I started crying, and I'm just like, I can't do this anymore. I started crying anyways. So I went and I called the manager, but the manager was like off. It was like a different manager, and I told her what happened. So I'm crying in front of her, like basically bawling my eyes out, and I'm just like, whatever. She's like, go home, go home. So I had like the week after, I had like a day off, like it's called an ADO. And then I called my manager, who was off at the time, and I told her what happened, and I'm like, telling her, blah, 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 this is what happened. She screams at everyone. She screams at the doctors. She's basically insane. Anyways, and then, like, I can't do this anymore. And then she's like, okay. And she's like, she hangs up the phone, and she calls me back. She's like, I took her off the roster. Okay? I took her off the roster. So she never worked again in that area. Mm-hmm. Okay? And then I'm like, should I come to work? The next day she said yes. So I went to work the next day, and then she comes up to me, and she hugs me, and she apologized to me. And she's so sorry about her behavior, blah, blah, blah. She never ever worked again in that area. But because of like the way she used to deal with everyone and how rude she was, or just because she was so stressed out, like it wasn't only me, because it wasn't only with what she was doing with me, it was basically what she was doing with everyone. My manager took her off the roster, and she couldn't work there again.
Yeah. So it seems like the common theme here is work, right? We have troubles at work. Thank you for sharing, Verena.
I don't even know why I said that.
Thank you. Okay, so we do experience it, and we do experience God intervening on our behalf and protecting us or saving us from these situations. And there are people out there who are not so good, all right? Not to judge, but there are people out there who are not so good. So thank you. Let's go back in time now. Go back to Saul and David. So a little bit of the background or the context as to this chapter, where it like setting the scene a little bit. At this point in time, Saul is becoming increasingly jealous of David. David's had a lot of victories, and his rising popularity amongst the people. Like, it's really skyrocketing. And everything he does is more successful than it was ever meant to be. He keeps exceeding expectations. Now, a reminder also that God had left Saul by this point as well, but he was with David. Now, you will see a few verses at the end of the chapter where God's Spirit came back to Saul. And we saw that on and off a lot throughout the whole story, not just this chapter. So even much earlier, when David would play the harp for Saul, which we also saw in this chapter, Saul would completely calm down. He wouldn't do the crazy things that he was doing. But when God's Spirit left him, then an evil spirit would come and visit him, and that's when he would actually go crazy. And that actually became more and more often, and in the end, Saul's end wasn't very good. That's not to say that he was never good. So that's actually a bit scary too. But God had left Saul, but he was with David. And that made Saul very scared, very insecure, and like he was in a panic, actually panicking. But Saul was also proud and selfish, which is actually part of the reason that God's Spirit left Saul and replaced him with David ultimately. Now, self-focus is like fertilizer on fear. So it fuels it. And it smells about the same too. When we're so focused on ourselves, that's when we're at our worst, pretty much. And that's what we see happened to Saul. And it becomes a vicious cycle, right? So despite David's loyalty, Saul turns really hostile. And David was really loyal to him. He was. And so this is where we see that envy turning into a destructive sin. He tried so many ways to kill David. Okay, so you can see here that even after he had promised Jonathan that he wasn't going to, and David came back into his presence, like that would have been a bit awkward, right? You just tried to kill me, but here I am, back with you, trusting you, and then suddenly he thrust a spear at him. He lost it, right? And that is the absence of God's Spirit, what we're seeing. But he tried everything, okay? It wasn't just the spear. He put him strategically in wars to try and get rid of him. He did a lot of different things. And every single time it backfired. Every single time. Just like you can see in this chapter. It backfired on him every time. And actually, more than that. It didn't just backfire. It was counterproductive. Every effort that Saul put in to kill David built David up. Okay? And that actually drove Saul mad. Just actually mad. Literally, physically, he went mad. As I was reading, there were 3 ways in this chapter anyway, alone. Not that there's only 3 ways that God uses, but in this chapter, I just wanted to highlight 3 ways that God protected David. 3 different ways. Number 1, the first way that he protected David was through Jonathan's intervention. That's verses 1 to 7. We see that very, very clearly and very, very strongly. Jonathan was that kind of friend who the psalm says is better than a brother. That's the kind of friend that Jonathan was. Those are rare, by the way. If you have one, that's a direct blessing from God. Not a lot of people have a friend like Jonathan. But it was Jonathan's intervention. Remember, Jonathan is Saul's son. Like, that's also ironic. He's not just a random person. And what that I think highlighted to me is don't belittle the power of intercession, or of either you're the one doing the pleading or the praying on behalf of someone else, or somebody else praying for you for God's protection. That is not something to be sneezed at. That's a very, very real and very, very powerful thing. And we believe, so in our New Testament that we're living in, we also believe in the intercessions of the saints, of course. So you ask the saints to ask God for protection. So it's just like a parallel, but Jonathan literally, he actually talked his dad out of it, right? So you'll see in the beginning that he actually made his dad relent. And I actually believe that probably in that moment, Saul meant it. He actually was convinced. He's like, okay, I won't kill him. But that's not to say that he relapsed later and thrust a spear at him. But Jonathan's intervention was powerful. Second way that in the one chapter that we see God's protection was through Michal. Michal was David's wife, but before she was David's wife, she was the daughter of Saul. In fact, she was meant to be his prize for killing Goliath, right? And Saul, was a bit dodgy about it as well, but, eventually he did marry Michal. Now, Michal was actually meant to be a snare from Saul to David. Did anybody notice, when Albert was reading, the way that Michal saved David? What did she put in the bed? No, but goat hairs.
A cover of goat. Oh.
No, yeah, so she covered it in goat hair, but what was it? What did she put in the bed instead of David himself? What verse was it in?
It's
13, that's right. And Michal took an image. Does anybody know what the Bible's referring to here when it says image? An image, what's an image? So it's a concept that we see in modern day movies, right? When a teenager's sneaking out and they put something on their bed and then they cover it so their parents think that they're asleep in bed because of all the lumps. That's exactly what Michal did here. This image was an idol. Because it is said, and I only learnt this during my preparation, there's a contemplation that says Michal actually worshipped idols or was involved with idols. And Saul, thinking he's smart, went, oh, okay, I'll give her to him and she will lure him away from God with her idolatry. But even that backfired because she used the idol to save David's life. The parallel I drew here is God can even turn something bad, something evil, something that's meant to harm us. Not that he turns it into good, but he can actually use it for a good outcome. It's not that the idol was good or that Michal was suddenly okay for having this image with her or for being involved in this idolatry. But he still used it to save his life. So when the assassins that Saul sent to Michal's bedroom where David was meant to be arrived, she lied to them. And that's like I said, it's a tale as old as time, right? To pretend that someone's in bed and then she lied to them, even though it was an image that she used. So I found that very interesting. And then the third way was just so towards the end from verse 18. The third time was just through God's direct Spirit. And in this day and age, we already have the Holy Spirit within us. And so we have that direct protection. So it was God's direct Spirit stopped Saul's messengers in their tracks. And so we have access to all of those three ways and more as well. But ultimately, what these three ways show is that God's hand is sovereign over human anger. So no matter how bad somebody's anger is, like Verena's insane boss, and no matter how powerful somebody is, I'm assuming she was more powerful than you in the workplace. My story as well, it was somebody who was more powerful than me. I'm assuming same with you. So no matter how powerful, because Saul was king. King was that's the top. He was right after God in the Israelites' culture back then, and even now, a king is a king. You're actually second to God. No matter how much power and anger is channeled through somebody against you, God's hand is still sovereign over that. So we shouldn't fear other humans. But you might say, oh, But there are some people who don't seem to be protected, like that bullet that killed Charlie Kirk, killed him. And so is God not protecting him? Well, no, that's like it's a different discussion, because evil still resides in this world, and will until we make it to the end and to heaven. So there is still going to be evil. Bad things will still happen. The Bible doesn't say we're going to have an easy run. It's just that we do have God's protection. What he does allow to happen, though, and his will and all of that, they're like a different but maybe parallel discussion. You can't mix the two. You can't say, well, if this, then not this, or if this, then not this. It's not that black and white. But here we're talking about God's protection, and we do see it. Now, seeing that we are studying the Bible, if we go to Psalm 11, please. Just switch for a moment to Psalm 11. It's a pretty short psalm. Does anybody want to read it quickly? Because it's linked. So David wrote Psalm 11 at the time of the occurrences of the 1 Samuel 19. So that's why it's relevant. But it's not very long. It's just seven verses.
Start reading.
Psalm 11.
Yep. In the Lord I put my trust. How can you say to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? For look, the wicked bend their bow. They make ready their arrow on the string, that they may shoot secretly at the upright in heart. If the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? The Lord is his holy temple. The Lord's throne is in heaven. His eyes behold, his eyelids test the sons of men. The Lord tests the righteous, but the wicked and the one who loves violence his soul hates. Upon the wicked he will rain coals. Fire and brimstone and burning wind shall be the portion of their cup. For the Lord is righteous, he loves righteousness. His countenance beholds the upright.
Right, so as I was saying, Psalm 11 was a psalm that David wrote around the same time that Saul was pursuing him like this. So the first couple of verses says, in the Lord I put my trust. How can you say to my soul, flee as a bird to your mountain? For look, the wicked bend their bow, they make ready their arrow on the string, that they may shoot secretly at the upright in heart. Like, he's clearly talking here about Saul, who threw a spear at him. All right, that's what I think that's what he's saying. But he never once lost trust in God. He never once said, "Why me?" or lost his faith in God. We see David's trust actually strong in this time in his life, and it was a long time. But mind you, it was years that Saul did this to him. It wasn't like a week or a month. It was years. He doesn't doubt God's love for him, despite all the attacks. And each attack was like a serious attack on him. It wasn't a joke. And then the last couple of verses I really liked as well. Upon the wicked he will rain coals, fire and brimstone, and a burning wind shall be the portion of their cup. For the Lord is righteous, he loves righteousness, his countenance beholds the upright. So David knows that God is going to take vengeance for him, and he also is pretty confident in his own innocence. He didn't do anything wrong. He hasn't done anything wrong. So he never lost trust in God. And we too, even when we endure such attacks, and we will in this world, for whatever reason, whether it's like corporate politics like what we spoke about, or increasingly now just purely based on our beliefs, like the Bible told us would happen, and like what is happening in the current affairs that we're following in the US and everything like that, people are going to be against us. But David never, ever lost faith. And it's very, very easy to say to God, why me? Why are all these attacks coming to me? But he didn't. So those are like the three main points that I wanted to draw out of 1 Samuel 19. That those are the three ways that God protected him in this particular chapter. Some of the theological themes in the chapter are also very clear. Jealousy leads to sin. Saul's envy absolutely blinded him to God's will, blinded him. And if you think about it, what was the first sin really? It was a sin of pride. But ultimately, Satan was jealous of God. Imagine that, like being jealous of God himself. It's the epitome of evil. It is the epitome of evil, and we saw that in Saul. Number two, I already touched on it. God can use people, or anything really, people or anything else, to protect his children, and he does. Whether it's Jonathan in your friends, or Michal in your family, or God's direct spirit in you, he can use anything, even what's negative, like Michal's image or her idol. I also really liked the foreshadowing in the chapter. So, like David, even in the Old Testament, if you look for Christ, you'll find Christ in the chapters of the Old Testament as well. He didn't just pop up out of nowhere in the New Testament. But we know that Christ's story is that he was also innocent but pursued by these powerful people, these leaders. But God's plan still prevailed. When he was hung on that cross, things did not look promising. They didn't look promising for him or for humanity at all. So it's not to say that he didn't get onto the cross at all. No, he did. He got onto that cross. He was hung on that cross in the worst, most vicious possible way. But God's plan and his will prevailed in the end. So it's not like we can say, God, you can stop the attack. He can stop the attack. Oftentimes he doesn't stop the attack. Like I said, David was pursued by Saul for years. And each time he came this close to death. Each time. But then in the end, he was built up, like I said. So just to finish, a couple of practical applications. So we've done a lot of the history of the scene and some of the theological themes. But what are the practical applications that also we can take when we walk out that door today, in this day and age that we're living in? There's a really strong theme of friendship and loyalty in this chapter. Jonathan and David's friendship is probably one of the most outstanding, like to me, relationships in all of the Bible. It's really, really rare, like I said, to find that. Jonathan risks himself for David, and he does end up dying before David, well before David. But let's just leave David for a moment. Put yourself in Jonathan's shoes. Are we afraid to stand up for our friends or support our friends when we're in danger? Or when we're under pressure? We've got workplace stress, we've got bullying, we've got family struggles, we've got politics, we've got, those who are conservative at the lunch table at work, and those who are we so worried about ourselves? Because Jonathan wasn't. Scripture upholds those who sacrifice to protect others. So Jonathan is really, really upheld. But there's many other stories who sacrificed friendship, themselves for their friends, not even for their families. Like, even remember the Egyptian midwives that saved the babies of the Israelites, even though that they were told by their Pharaoh to kill them. And Rahab was actually a prostitute. She was not part of the Israeli nation, and she wasn't Jewish. And she lied, very similar. She lied to the assassins, and she lied, and she saved Caleb and Joshua and the spies. And she's upheld. And she's upheld to today, and Christ came from her line. It's one of the highest callings and honours, and it's very noble to be putting yourself at risk for your friends. So if you have a friend like that, like I said before, count yourself lucky, count yourself blessed actually. But actually what we should be doing is striving to be a friend like Jonathan. Jealousy check, just a rhetorical question that you can think about yourself. Do you secretly resent other people's successes? And how can we fight that gratitude, that envy with gratitude? Because like I said at the very beginning when we were looking at what was happening to Saul, self-focus, pride, selfishness, ego is like fertilizer to destruction. It fuels destruction. The other thing that we saw practically is that how David trusts in God, but not just in God, but in his timing. This went on for a long time, as I've mentioned a couple of times. He never once retaliated. And not only that, he had the opportunity to kill Saul and didn't. He only relied on God. And that's what we should do as well. It's really, really hard not to want to take that revenge, especially when you're seeing what's happening in the world and that fire boils up inside of us as we see people who are aligned with our faith get persecuted like this, whether it be in our own country, back home in Egypt, or as I said, what's recently happened in the US. It makes us just really want to take revenge. It's not for us to take. It's for God to take. And I just wanted to close with one verse of one psalm. Psalm 27, verse 1. I just wanted to close with that. So Psalm 27, verse 1 says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" David wrote this psalm as well. And so just a reminder that really, if we really trusted in God, there is nobody in this world, no matter how powerful they might seem, no matter how armed they might be with physical weapons, no matter how much hate is channeled through them, we really shouldn't fear anybody at all. And glory be to God forever. Question? Okay. I wasn't going to open it to questions. 40 minutes.
So you mentioned David not questioning God, saying, why me, things like that. So it seems like that's the God standard. But if we find ourselves questioning God, saying, why me, or going through something and questioning, what would you say is the best strategy or something practical that we could do to realign ourselves?
Let me correct myself. There are psalms where he did question God, actually. There are, not question God, express his agony and anguish and fear to God. There are some psalms where he does do that. I did hear something, a very nice contemplation via this Bible plan that I'm doing. And the person was saying, God is not too small or too big for our questionings. He doesn't actually mind them. So you can question God, you can ask him why, and he won't be intimidated by that. He's not like a human who might get defensive. He won't. You can have that frank conversation with God. But you know what that counts as? It's still a prayer. He would actually prefer you to come, lay down everything on the table, be honest with him, and open your heart to him. But it's still a prayer. He's not intimidated by that, and he doesn't actually mind it. And what he said on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's a direct line from a psalm. It was, yeah. And so I should correct myself. It's not that David never questioned God, but I think it's he never lost trust in God, gave up on him, and walked away. That's when you're in trouble, I think. Saul did, though. Does that answer the question? Yeah, I shouldn't have actually said he never questioned God, because he did.
Any final questions? No, thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
So big thank you again to Jackie for taking us through chapter 19 of the book of 1 Samuel. We're lucky to have Jackie again next week to take us through